everyone, welcome to Gardening TLC. You are at Garden Gab, where we are talking about the garden in the garden. We are answering all of the questions from last month's videos, and there are a lot of questions. We are also sharing all of those beautiful viewer submission pictures that you guys have been sending me. And oh my goodness, I am so inspired whenever I get your pictures because it gives me so many ideas, and I love to see what other people create. So today we're going to answer some questions. We're going to look at some beautiful pictures. Come along with me and let's just check it out. I live in Northern Illinois, Zone 5. For those of you that are new, I've been living at my property for about 7 years, and I've been gardening in it for about 6. So I have gardens in all different stages of development. I am a garden center owner, and I'm a retired, I say that all the time, I try to be a retired landscape designer. I can't quite seem to pull out of it. If you are new here, welcome to our channel. I'm glad that you're here. I hope that you're thinking about joining our little community because it's a lot of fun. We teach a lot of different things about gardening. We visit other people's gardens. It's just a really good time. And if you're interested, please subscribe below. Make your comments, like, share, and all of that fun stuff that you normally do with YouTube. We're going to jump right in because we have 12 videos to cover, and I do still think that that's too many. We are going to host a second Garden Gab. Now, I'm going to cover all 12 videos today. It's probably going to be a little bit of a longer video, so hopefully you hang in there. But we are going to start doing 2 a month. Now, whether or not I do 2 a month in this format, or we do the live one on Saturday, August 17, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Tune in for that, and we love that, or we hate that. Either way, there's going to be 2, because I just think that this is getting too long, and every month, more and more people are sending their pictures, and I don't want to not show all of the pictures that I get because I love all of them and I want to show them all. Now, at some point, I'll probably get to the point where I can't do that, and then we'll just do something else. But for now, we can do it, and we're gonna do it. So 2 Garden Gabs, they'll always be the first and the third Saturday of the month. All right, so let's jump in now. Our first video was on cutting back perennial and shrubs. We went around and we did our cut back of all the items right around the 3rd week in June that needed to be cut back. Since then, everything has flushed back. They look really great, but I know some of you are afraid to go out and cut things in your garden, and so we did a video on that, hopefully maybe to show you some techniques and to ease your mind. This first picture is from Janet Trent. This is a brand new garden, some winter sown annuals and perennials. She lives in Michigan, Zone 6A. I think this fall I will extend the bed the length of the yard. Thank you for your channel. You give me so much inspiration and information. I'm glad that you're enjoying the channel. I'm glad that you're being inspired because that's what it's all about. Our first question comes from CMash5195. They want to know, do you also cut back your spirea significantly or just the spent blooms? So I only trim back spent blooms on spireas in the summer, and I give it a cut back all the way to the ground in the spring. This next picture is from Phyllis Stevenson. She has a picture in a pot here of Placantris and Impatiens. She lives in Zone 7, McMinnville, Tennessee. She wasn't expecting the Placantris to weave through the Impatiens like that, and she said she'll definitely do it again. I love this color combination, that cool silver with that bright red, and it is cool the way they wove together. Thank you for sharing your picture. It's lovely. The next question came from Lana Molzik. I don't know if I'm saying that right, and I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. All right, but 5139. What are your thoughts about feeding your perennials again after I cut them back? And you can certainly do that. The one time I would tell you not to feed your perennials is when it gets crazy hot outside. They just aren't taking it in, and it's just a waste of money. If the temperatures are cool enough, you can feed them, and otherwise I wait. Now, the other time if I'm doing a cutback that I don't feed them is if we're towards the middle of August. That's when the cutoff kind of is here in Zone 5 for stopping feeding anything, because you don't want to push new growth on stuff that you want to harden off for winter. You guys soak in the beauty of this pot while I answer the next question from Tammy Beam 507. What about knockout roses? Half of the bush seems to be done for now, and the other half of the bush is still bringing fresh blooms. She has several bushes right in front. So in the video, I did take my shears and I clipped back my knockout roses because mine seem to cycle. And so when they do that, I just cut them off. The other reason I cut mine back like that was because I did not get my fertilizer with the systemic in it, the one that I like to use from Fertilome, right there. I didn't get it on my shrubs like I should have back in April. I was late. I got it on in May. It takes about a month for that product to work its way up into your shrub. So I had some insect damage. So it was kind of a two-part prune. I wanted to prune some of that off. Mine have since reflushed and grown, and they look great. Now, you can go through and just clip off individual spent blooms, but you don't have to do that. I do it for aesthetics. It makes the rose bush bloom faster when it gets new buds, but it also makes it look better. But if you never did that, it will still rebloom. You're just going to have the dead blooms on there as well. Meldog7925. Do you have a video that explains, or can you tell me how you came to have a garden center? I'm curious about your background. Maybe it is time that I did a short video about my background and who I am, but I'll give you the real short version of how we came to own a garden center. We own another company that we've had for 25 years called Image Pros. Image Pros does asphalt, concrete, and landscaping. When I came on board at Image Pros, it was to grow the landscape division, and that's what I did for a long time. The designer, I sold, I designed, I wrote quotes, visited customers, coordinated jobs, and did all the landscaping things that you do to run that division. We were doing that, and we always rented property from other people, and we kept outgrowing our property, so we decided we needed to find a piece of property that was ours. The garden center was empty. It had been empty for 7 years. We made an offer, we got it, and we decided it was a good fit with who we already were, so we opened the garden center. We just finished, or we're getting ready to finish, our 10th year as a garden center. So we are a baby as far as like how long we've owned a garden center, but there you go. That's the short version. Hazel Norman 8102 wants to know, what about cutting back daylilies? I hope it's good for them because I already did it. Well, I'm getting ready to do it right here because this patch of strawberry candy is done. Now my pardonies are still pushing some flowers, so I'm going to wait on those. But if I don't cut these back, they look so horrible in like a week and a half to 2 weeks after they're done. I can't stand it. If I cut them back to the ground, they will actually flush new growth and look better for the rest of the season. Let's cut them back. Oh yeah, that was satisfying. All right, Denise Jackson 5368. She wants to know, what about yarrow and what about hollyhocks? She's scared again. You know what? I'm not afraid to cut anything back in my garden because it will grow back. Perennials are pretty forgiving, so just know that. It might do something funky, but you know what? You'll find out what it's going to do. This is the yarrow. I just cut this back like 4 days ago. The hollyhocks are right here, and I have not cut those back yet. And you know what? If you want them to seed, you got to let them die back like this, dry out, and let the seeds fall. If you don't want them to seed, cut them back to the ground. Ozark View 928 wants to know how old this is. Well, that one is a solar flare. Look at it's recovered very nicely. That one is only 4 years old. Let me show you the other one. Here is the other one in the driveway. This is the Baptisia australis. It's 5 years old. Didn't they recover nice? I love it when they're smaller. The next picture comes from Jan Pyatt. She lives in Geneva, Illinois. Isn't this a beautiful example of a shade garden? So this is her partial shade garden in July. She loves watching our video and she hopes to visit the garden center someday. Please come and see me. Drop me a line before you come so that I make sure that I'm there because I'm not there every day. So I would love to meet you though. This is gorgeous. Our question comes from Chuck Kolb 1270. Any advice for lavender? So I grow lavender as an herb. I don't have any lavender growing in my garden. When I grow lavender and I'm harvesting, I harvest when the flowers are ready. I just cut the flower stems off as long as I can. I'll harvest after the dew is off of them, but before the heat of the day. And I just keep harvesting until there's no more flowers left to harvest. Usually I get about a 6-week window and I just keep picking and I just keep on drying. Now for me, I do not cut my lavender back in the fall. I cut mine back in the spring. I wait until I see new growth and then I cut it back. Oh, I like this rose growing in the obelisk. It is so pretty. This picture comes from Linda McKinney, who lives in Michigan City, Michigan. And I'm trying to find somebody else that's on the way to Michigan City to do a garden tour of, because I would love to go to Linda's house and tour her garden, but it's 4.5 hours. So a little bit further than I want to go, but who lives on the way there from Rockford? I will tour your garden too and make it worth my time driving 4.5 hours. All right, Linda, I really want to come. And I love this picture of this rose. Linda writes, I am Linda in Southern Michigan, Zone 6A. This is called Sweet Fragrance, even though it doesn't have a scent. She's a first-year gardener, and I inspire her, and I'm so glad that I do. Thank you. My first year gardening, and I'm the best teacher. Well, thank you very much. All right, well, anyways, I hope that I'm teaching people things and that you're learning things, or even if you're not learning something, hopefully you're entertained. All right, our question, though, comes from Tibetan 2. Hi, Michelle. My 30-year-old peony has a horrible case of powdery mildew this year. It happened right after the plant came into full bloom this spring. Should I cut it down to the ground now and treat the area with copper fungicide, or should I wait until fall? Also, is it too late to cut back a forsythia now in June? So when this video came out, it was like, I want to say the last week in June. Usually on forsythias and things like that, you have maybe until the second week in July to get that cut back done, or you're going to cut off all your flowers for the following year. The earlier you can cut back a spring bloomer, the better. So you want to make sure you get that done as quickly as you can so you're not cutting off your flowers. The other thing is with your peony. Now, if it's got that powdery mildew, get it off of there as quick as you can. If it's the whole plant, yeah, cut it back to the ground. I think if you can cut most of it out and get rid of it, bag it up, don't throw it in your compost pile, hopefully you're getting rid of your problem. If it starts to grow back new growth and that has powdery mildew on it as well, then I might treat it with the copper fungicide. Now, I'll give you guys a little trick of something that I do in my garden. One of the things that I do in early spring, because I do have one peony bush and I have some Monarda that's growing at the garden center, they are both prone to powdery mildew. And with all the rain that we've had this year, more so than most years. So what I do is I grow garden chives. So in the spring, they're one of the first things that come up. What I do is that first batch of garden chives that comes up, I cut it back to the ground. I take them inside, I chop them up in like pieces like this. I throw them in a pot of water and I bring it to a boil. I might boil it for like 30 seconds. And then I turn off the water. I let those chives just seep in that water. When it's cooled down about an hour, hour and a half later, or even the next day, I will take that chive water, strain it through a strainer, and put it in a spray bottle. I use that spray bottle of chive water to spray anything that is susceptible to powdery mildew. Now, you're using this as a preventative. This does not work if you've already got the powdery mildew. But what I do is I keep my spray bottle over on my potting bench, and as I'm walking the garden once a week, every 3 or 4 days, depending on what the rain is doing, I'll spray that chive water on my peony, and I have zero powdery mildew. So I know it works even in a heavy rain year, but you've got to be pretty persistent and you've got to be pretty consistent getting it on your plant so that it doesn't get powdery mildew. So I did that all this year, zero powdery mildew on my peony. The other thing though, with powdery mildew, make sure you have good airflow wherever those plants are. And if you feel like your peony's too thick, get in there and clip out some bottom branches before you get the powdery mildew so that there's good airflow. It's the number one reason why you get powdery mildew. It's a fungus, is airflow, and the foliage is always wet. Ooh, Patricia, who knew that orange and pink could look so good together? I love this. I don't know that I ever thought that those two colors went together, but this picture proves me wrong because this is beautiful. This is from Patricia Ellingson, Zone 5 up in Wisconsin near Madison. This is a tall pink garden phlox in the back, and it's the Highland Pinch Finger Daylily in the foreground, and to the right is some native bee balm. This is so striking. I love this. I love learning things from you guys. All right, Carmen Kuhn 3865. I struggle with this, the cutting back of perennials and things in her garden. All right, I just last week cut back my annuals. My perennials are first and second year other than my daylilies. I've been selectively cutting them back. Learning. Does your outside temperature make a difference? It's 100 degrees this week. Now, I try not to do it when it's 100 degrees. I try to do it when the temperatures are below 90. That week they were. I might wait if I have some temperatures coming through. Now, we don't get 100-degree temperatures very often. We have yet to have one this year, but we definitely get in the 90s. I think that they look worse when they're stressing in the heat than if you cut them back and give them some relief. The biggest thing, give them water. They got to stay hydrated. This next picture is from Pam Wishington. Hi, Michelle. I started watching your videos this summer and I have learned so much. I love your enthusiasm. Thanks for sharing your vast knowledge. You're very welcome. I'm in Zone 5B, now 6A, in Northeast Missouri. I still plant for 5B, and that is wise. For all of you out there who they changed the planting zones for, I wouldn't trust them. At least not the first year. I would still plant for the zone that you actually are in. It only takes one harsh winter to take out anything that you plant because you think you're in a new zone. I don't trust them. All right. I'm approaching 75 years on this planet, and I'm looking for any ideas on how to reduce the maintenance. Well, keep watching my videos because I am all about low maintenance. All right, wisteria covers the arbor and vines in the star magnolia tree. Currently, the black-eyed Susans are the star, and they are gorgeous. I love the wall that you have there. It's beautiful, and I really like the windmill that's in there too. All right, in front of them are Missouri evening primrose. Both are native to this area. The windmill comes from my parents' garden. Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. The tall, bright red is cardinal flower, and you can see a cardinal on the railroad tie by the sunflower. The sunflowers were planted by the birds. Isn't that great when that happens? The pots and hanging baskets are full of annuals, providing color all summer. This is great. I love it. Thank you. Empress Kimberly 4410. I know you've been following me for a long time. Hello, how are you? She wants to know about cutting the flower stalks off lupines. And yes, cut those flowers back to the ground when they're done. Our next video was low maintenance landscape design install. Now this was a design that we actually did in a video as well back in, I think it was April, or maybe it was even March, but we did the design first, then Leslie and John actually hired me to come and do the landscape install. So they live in this really cute cottagey house. Isn't that great? And then we did the design, and then we installed the design, and that's what the video's on. Let's answer your questions. Pamela DR2XN wants to know, bush honeysuckle is invasive. Is the one that I'm recommending in the video not? It is not invasive. This is a proven winner deer villa. It is a bush honeysuckle. It is sterile. It is non-invasive. They have the Kodiak series, which is the one that I'm using in this video. The Kodiak red was the one that we put in. I have an orange and a black at my house. Love this shrub. They are an awesome problem solver. 4x4, sun, shade, pretty much any kind of soil. They don't have to be pruned. Excellent, excellent shrub. Hello, Sue Baker. I love your picture. Sue Baker lives in zone 4 in Wisconsin. That means she's probably a little ways up north if she's in 4. This is a picture of a flower bed that she does at a restaurant to make it bright and cheerful, and she's been filling it for about 15 years. She changes it up every year, and people will come to the restaurant just to see what she planted. I think it's pretty awesome and pretty beautiful. Thank you for sending the picture. Our question comes from Michelle France 1165. I just purchased 3 Korean feather reed grass. Do they put on some size in the first growing season? A little bit, but not a lot. It really takes them 3 years to get full grown, so think of it kind of this way. The first year it sleeps, the second year it creeps, and the third year it leaps. By year 3, though, it should be full grown and glorious. Sandra Connor 6968 wants to know where my garden center is. It is in Rockford, Illinois. The address is always in the description. Anytime anyone wants to come and see me, drop me a line to make sure I'm there. I would love to meet anyone that wants to come to the garden center. Hi, Monique. Monique Hamilton 7391. Do I prefer winter gem boxwoods to green velvets? Yes, I do. I just like the winter gems. They're a little bit smaller than the green velvets because green velvets can get 4x4. Now, green velvets are a little bit darker, but I have found that the winter gems keep their round shape better, and I love that they hold their green color in the winter. They're my favorites, and I have quite a few of them growing around my house. This next picture is from Tina Garisco. I just watched your back garden redesign video and I loved it. I learned something new in every episode. Attached is a photo taken from my July garden, Zone 5, Southeast Wisconsin. The pictured butterfly sure was enjoying the purple coneflower that day. It was fun to watch her flutter from one to another. I have the hardest time getting butterfly pictures. They are so fast and I never can get them in focus and get a good picture. So this one is fabulous, and I love the liatris that's woven through there. It's so cool looking. Now our question comes from Lisa B6818. It's a separate question about Veronica. She bought 8 Wizard of Oz on clearance for $3 each. That's a deal. I want to put them in the garden that has gravel and hard clay soil. Do I have any suggestions for successful growing? So when you're growing in those kind of conditions, what I do is when I'm backfilling, I'll use half native soil and half compost. Veronica don't have crazy big root systems, and they're not very big plants, so they should do well if that's how you backfill and then make sure you water them in well and keep them watered. Thank you for your picture, Ann Lotsoff. She sent me a picture last month as well. I love seeing all the different parts of your garden. All right, she is in zone 5B, 6A, and her backyard is almost entirely dry shade. So she's learned to love and appreciate foliage over the years, especially hostas. I love hostas. All right, I probably have over 30 varieties. Oh my gosh, I don't think I have that many. I might have 20. I'm gonna catch you though, because I'm gonna keep putting them in. All right, this one is called So Sweet. It looks reliably lush, and it sure does, and full every year. Very little slug damage, and the rabbits leave it alone. Well, you're lucky because, well, I don't have slugs and rabbits eating the hostas. I have deer and earwigs, so I have just a different problem. But this is gorgeous. Our question comes from Patricia Kumar, 115. I have a question about how I pruned my lavender plants. She must have pruned them back too far 2 autumns ago. I got more flowers this year than I did last year. However, the plants look really pathetic. The foliage is very sparse and the flowers are very droopy. Is there anything short of replacing them that I can do to revive my lavender plants? Unfortunately, with lavender, once you cut back into that woody base, they're goners. I love blue in the garden, and if you can get a blue like this in your garden, oh my goodness, isn't this gorgeous? This picture is from Colleen Anderson, and I am really getting a good feel for her garden as well. She sends me a picture every month. I love the blue. So she has really been enjoying the blue delphiniums in the bed. That is the one that's like more forefront. The one that's a little further back, that's like more of a light blue, that is the blue larkspur. And she did this indoors this spring, and she planted it to go with the delphinium. They look fabulous. Absolutely, they look fabulous. She's hoping the larkspur will drop seed and come back next year. She wants to know how to propagate delphinium and larkspur. I have no clue. I've never done it. I always just plant the larkspur seeds, and in fact, I like to do larkspur in a winter sown jug. And then delphiniums, I just always buy plants. And I don't even have either of those in my garden right now. I had them at my other house, but I don't have a clue how to do that. So I'm sorry, I can't answer your question. But we do have a question from Kelly Michael, 9126. Hi, Michelle, me again. I have another question, and it's okay if you have another question. She planted 5 of the Kodiak bushes, and they are very small. They are about 3 years old, and the deer do taste test these. And that may be her problem. And what's interesting is how adaptive deer are, because the Kodiaks are supposed to be deer resistant. But I know deer adapt what they eat based on where they live. Any advice on how to give them a jump start? She was hoping to get them to grow in mostly shade. She wants to hide the neighbor's yard. The thing about it is, though, Kodiaks, if you're doing the Kodiak deer villas, that series only gets 4x4. So it's not a very big one to begin with. And 4x4 is probably in full sun. They will grow in full sun, part shade, full shade. But in full shade, I bet they are never going to get very big. So if they're 2x2, that might be all that you're going to get out of them. If you want to try to create a screen, you might have to get a larger bush. In the shade, I would recommend probably a viburnum. They will handle more shade and they'll get bigger. Our last question from that video came from Mary Palmer, 2088. I'm in zone 5. Are there any types of hosta that don't touch the ground? I like the looks of them, but I get creeped out trying to clean underneath them. Right there. This is a Crassa, make sure I say it right, a Crassa Regal. And one of my viewers, Kim Edge in Iowa City, helped me actually identify this. And I didn't know what it was. I grew it, I loved it, but see how it grows up like this so you can see the ground below it. I'm sure there's other ones. This is the only one that I know about, and it's the only one I have in my garden that actually does this. This is a transplant. It's 2 years old, but the plant that I transplanted it from was full grown, and it did this even when it was full grown. So there's your answer. Next video was landscape ideas using natural stone in the landscape. We went to Benson Stone, which is a stone yard here in town, and I just took you through and showed you some of the different materials that are out there. Flagstone, outcropping, fractured boulders, cut wall stone, just all of those beautiful natural materials. Janetta 5827 wants to know what my suggested distance or stride is between the stepping stones for a pathway. So for me, I walk it as I'm putting the flagstone down to make sure that it's a natural stride. So I don't know, I guess it depends on who's walking the paths and how tall they are. I love roseate geranium, and this is a really good example of a well-behaved one because I grew them in my garden and they got out of control big. They were so happy where I put them. This is what it's supposed to look like. Now, this picture came from Denise Hainsey. She lives in zone 6B, Harrisford, Pennsylvania. It's the hardy geranium roseane. It starts blooming in May, and it does. It blooms all the way until September, October. You cut it back to the ground. You don't really have to do anything to it, and then it comes back the next year. It's one of the few perennials that keeps blooming and blooming and blooming, and it's self-cleaning, which means it pushes its flowers off and makes new flowers. You gotta love this one. The question comes from Diane Pieria, 1860. I'm a new subscriber. Do I have a video showing inexpensive ways to edge a floral garden? So no, I don't have one exclusively just about edging, but I talk about different edging in different videos, but it is a good idea. Maybe I need to culminate one all together in one video. Maybe I'll do that this fall. We had the privilege of going on 7 garden tours here in Rockford. This is the next video. The first question we came from Kim Bullitt, 3293. We were at stop 3 and she wanted to know at 1020 what tree that was. That is a Chinese fringe tree. I think it's very underplanted. I think if you're looking for a small tree to put in your yard, these are perfect if you live in zone 5 through 9. They're very fragrant. They have these beautiful blossoms on them. They're pretty slow growing. They're going to get 15 to 20 feet high, 20 to 25 feet wide. Unfortunately, they're not deer resistant. They will come and nibble on those, so you might have to like lift your canopy up so they aren't eating on it, or put repellent on it if you really want to get one. Very showy, very beautiful. This next picture is from Noreen Bernardini. She lives in zone 6B, 7A in Pennsylvania. This month's picture, and she's been sending me pictures, is one of my favorite full sun areas in my backyard. Elephant ear with white calibrachoas, raised box and trellis with climbing cardinal, red and white calibrachoas, and white dianthus. Amaryllis is summering outside, and some extra spikes. Love your channel. Thank you. This is beautiful. Thank you, Kim, for sending a beautiful snippet of something in your garden. These are Oriental lilies. Now, Kim lives in Iowa City, Zone 5B, and she says that she bought these lilies from a site called The Lily Garden. The red and white one is Leslie Woodruff, and the white one at the bottom is Silver Scheherazade. Isn't Scheherazade the one that would tell the stories to the Sultan and then she would never finish the story so that he wouldn't like kill her? Inquiring minds wanted to know. I don't know what made me go off on that tangent, but the question is actually from Peggy Riordan, 9857. This was about the garden that we went to that had the hostas and the lilies all growing together. I'd like to know how to grow hostas and lilies in the same area since they have different sun needs. She must have just the right circumstances to make that happen. There were quite a few trees in that garden, and I'll bet that there's just enough dappled shade to make that happen. So I don't know, because I didn't get a chance to really talk to the homeowner at that one. She really had a lot of people that were asking her a lot of questions, and I just didn't get an opportunity to ask any of my own. But boy, that garden sure was beautiful. During the last Garden Gab, there were a few questions that were generated from that, so I thought I'd answer those really fast. This next picture is from Ann Kendall. She is 75 years old and she lives in Indiana, Zone 5A. This garden was started 25 years ago from nothing. First she put in the walkway, then she put in the trees, and then the sun-loving perennials went in first. But guess what? As things grow, now you have a shade garden, and she had to start flipping things out. So what she did was she got a power planter auger, her new best friend, and she put in 43 new plants. That is so awesome. And I'm so glad that you were able to get one and that you can still get out there and garden. This is great. The first question came from Peaches and Sugar 1. How do I keep blue fescue clumps blue? Mine are only blue on the outside and inside is brown. You do have to cut those back every year, and you need to do it before the new grass starts to grow. They're a cool season grass, so you got to get it early. This picture is from Marilyn Fineland. Hi, Michelle, sending you another photo from my Flemington, New Jersey Zone 6B garden. This is the back of my house. You can see the posts and deer fencing that I need to use in order to actually have plants without the deer browsing and creating tons of damage. It makes it a lot more difficult to garden in this area. I bet it does. But it allows me to enjoy so many more flowers than I could if I didn't have that there. In the foreground on the left is a part of a proven winner Vermillionaire. That is a little gnome house that my brother made for me. And behind that in the green pot is a Persian shield, which seems to be taking a long time to grow, along with a Mercedonia Little Sunshine. Behind that in a whiskey barrel are 3 Diachondra Silver Falls, 3 Coleus, Talavera sienna, and 3 begonias. Absolutely lovely. And I know sometimes deer pressure can make gardening so difficult. This beautiful picture of echinacea comes from Alexandra. She lives in Zone 5, Ontario. I just wanted to share my Cheyenne Spirit echinacea. I started out with only 2 small plants, 1 yellowish and 1 orange. All those different colors in there now, those are the babies of the original 2. I hate to weed them out as they are really cool, and she likes to see which variations come up every year in the baby plants. I love echinacea, and these are gorgeous. Our question comes from Christine Schuneman 4147. I have budworms and they are destroying my petunias. She's using 7 on them and she wants to know if they'll flower again. As long as you've killed the budworms, they should flower again. Be careful when you're using 7 that you're using that after all of your pollinators have gone to bed, because if they get it on their legs and take it back to their hives or their nests or wherever they're going, you can take out colonies of pollinators. I like to use BT. It's more of an organic that targets caterpillars only. And if the budworms are what your problem is, that will also solve your problem. And as long as you solve the problem, then yes, they'll bloom again. This picture is from Pam Brooks. She lives in Farmington, Missouri, Zone 7. My coneflowers have been beautiful this year. For the first time, my cup plant is blooming. It is a very pretty combination. I love that. She wants to know the best way to propagate the cup plant, and if I deadhead the cone flowers, will they bloom again? So I've never grown a cup plant ever, and I did respond and give her the steps to doing that. I'm not going to go through all of the different steps that she can do. But I do know on the echinacea, if you deadhead them, they will continue to bloom longer. Last question, Jeanette Fisher 256 wants to know what I think of creeping thyme. I love it. This picture is from Laura Lachette. I don't know if I said that right. She lives in Indiana Zone 6B, and she moved there from Southern California, which I think is like a Zone 9 or 10. So wow, you are having to relearn gardening and what grows in your area all over again. She said that is exactly what she's doing, but this is a section of her front yard bed with heuchera, spirea, a paniculata hydrangea, some dianthus, and annual geranium. She also has some surprise lilies that came up, and a mandevilla, and a concrete pot, and an evergreen hedge. It is in prime condition and everything is blooming. She'll be cutting things back this fall and then adding some candy corn spirea and some blue star juniper plants. This is a great little entrance into your house. It's so pleasing. All right, here's the last question from the last Garden Gab. It came from Hannah Beertz 1231. I think I had a striped gopher move in. I think it made the mischievous chipmunks scarcer, and I'm scared it will cut down my flowers and garden. Have you tried anything successful in getting rid of the ones you mentioned that come into your yard? So the only thing that I've ever done that's ever worked is making sure I keep my debris piles cleaned up, because they like debris piles. Repellent kind of sort of works, and I've trapped them and moved them, and I've just had to live with them sometimes. The next video was when we went on the rainy day nursery visit, and I reviewed the Fitville shoes, which I love those shoes. I'm still wearing them. Not a lot of questions were generated from that video. Most of them were about the boulevard tree and whether or not there was maintenance on that. So since I did that video, I have decided not to purchase the tree. I don't want the maintenance of it. I'm going to be using hopefully a weeping blue spruce instead. I do love that tree, but I just don't want to add things to the garden that are going to create more work for me. And that was pretty much all the questions were kind of around whether or not I should get that tree. I did a short little video when I went out to my daughter's house because I thought that what she did with her very first garden was so awesome. And so it was just called, I'm doing this next year, and I am doing that next year, where she took the cattle panels and made the tunnel and grew all those vegetables up it. Oh my gosh, I am just obsessed with doing that now. So one of the questions came from Peggy Mills. Love it. What size cattle panel does it take to do this? So the cattle panels that she bought, and there's a story in itself of just getting those cattle panels to her house, they were 4 feet wide and 16 feet long, and she did 5 panels because the tunnel is 20 feet long. Ivy Stitchin wanted to know how far apart the panels were and how far apart the stakes were. So they were 4 feet apart. But when you got to the inner part of the panel, she used 1 stake for 2 panels and kind of overlapped them a little bit. So she only needed 4 stakes on the first panel and the end panel, and then 2 stakes going down, all of them 4 feet apart, because that's how wide the panels were. This next sweet little picture comes from Bethany Morris. Bethany Morris lives in southeastern Indiana, Zone 6B. She has been watching my channel since I had about 1,500 subscribers. She is trying to build her own cottage garden. She loves the romance of them. She also has a toddler and a baby, so she's got her hands full. This is a reminiscent pink rose. It's in its first year. In the background is purple coneflowers that she grew from seed, some cosmos, and some millennium alliums. She had a question last month, and it kind of came in between that time where I stopped using pictures for the last Garden Gab because I had to make the Garden Gab. So she has a question and she's asking it again. Do you have a recommendation for small accent evergreens that can take full sun, heat, and shallow clay soil? She has a large flower bed alongside a driveway, and she wants some winter interest there without creating root damage because her septic tank is near there as well. All right, so based on what I've grown in clay soil along the parking lot edges at the garden center, the three that have done the best have been the emerald green arborvitae. That might be too tall for you because it's going to get 12 to 15 feet tall, but you could try a petite one because they do have the petite arborvitaes that stay a lot smaller if you can find one. The gold thread false cypress is a shrub, but it kind of grows up and it has a nice shape. I have those growing up along the road, and so they're in compacted soil. They get salt spray, full sun. Yeah, they grow under very adverse conditions up there. And another one that has a really nice soft color and it kind of falls a little bit with a nice pyramidical shape is a soft serve false cypress. Our next video was installing a paver patio must ask questions. And this one was really about if you're thinking about having it done or you're thinking about doing it yourself and you're not quite sure of the process or what questions to ask a contractor. I hope that I covered that in this video. This picture is from Lana Molzik. She lives in Nebraska, Zone 5B. I have daffodils in this area in early spring before the hostas and Jack of Diamond Brunnera grow. Then I fill it in with annual polka dot hypoestus plants and coleus. The bed is bookended by a fine line buckthorn and a small unhappy evergreen tree. I have tried to grow a fine line buckthorn twice. I can't get it to grow here. I think I have to have better soil than I have, and I'll have to make like an amended bed to have one. I want one, something fierce. This bed is great, and I love the obelisks in there. Peggy Mills had another question. Would I consider going through the process of a gravel patio? The reality is it's the same process. You just skip the pavers that are on the top. You're still gonna dig it out, core it out, put in your base, compact it in, and then find a nicer gravel to put on top. Like we sell a product called Spar Dust here. It's brown because all of our road gravel is yellow, and who wants yellow patio? So some places though have gray gravel, and maybe that's what you want on top. But the process really is the same. You still put it in 2-inch lifts and you still compact it in. This beautiful picture of white phlox is from Judy Genovese. She lives in Dyer, Indiana, Zone 5B, and what she loved about it was the beautiful bloom that popped up in between that phlox. Now you keep looking at that beautiful phlox while I answer one Simus 4's question about who makes the plastic flexible paver edging restraint that I showed in the video. So that is a Pave Tech product, but you can also buy them at a box store. They sell different kinds across the country. There's a lot of different companies that make them. Most of them are 7 to 8 feet long. Some of them are stiff, some of them are flexible. You just have to buy the one that works for you in the project that you're doing. The last question came from Debbie Renock 8435. She wanted to know what the blue flowers were that were in this pot. This is why you put tags on the edge of your pot. This is the blue Evolius, blew my mind from Proven Winners. I have never grown them until this year, but I will definitely be growing them again. The next video was projects in the garden, and we decided that we were gonna make up a planter at the end of July with a whole bunch of heat coming. This one right here. But doesn't it look great? Look at those bubble gums starting to put on some flowers. Then we drug this one out here, we cut it back, and look, it's recovering, getting more flowers. We also fixed another pot that wasn't looking that great. We worked in the front flower bed garden, and then we just picked up and finished a lot of projects that were kind of like hanging out all over the place. So for me, it was a very satisfying, productive day. The first question came from Mary Trujillo. She wants to know where I got this pop-up bag, and she wasn't the only one that asked the question. So this pop-up bag is from Gardening, and I did put a link in the video if this is something that you want to get. I am in love with this thing. I can't believe I didn't buy one sooner. Rosemary Time 6351 wanted to know what those purple flowers are. They are cleomes. They are from Proven Winners, and they are the Senorita Rosalita. Aren't those awesome? I plant these every year. Love them. This next picture that we're looking at came from Karen Dole. She lives in Portland, Oregon, which is a zone 9 now, was an 8. This is a brand new planting that she did back in April. Now, she's had some challenges with this bed because they had an ice storm and they had a week of 13-degree weather after she put it in, which is so not normal for where she lives. So I think it's looking pretty good considering that it had to go through that. That the only plants that I kept from the original bed are the vine maple tree, the Japanese anemone, the trillium, the spirea, and the nandina. She loves the red leaf hydrangea with its raspberry pink flowers. When she saw it on the Impatient Gardener, that's Erin's channel up in Milwaukee or north of Milwaukee, and so she got one and put it in the garden. That part of the bed gets 4 to 5 hours of morning sun. I love hellebores and heuchera and decided to try 3 grasses for the first time. She also planted some hosta and some annual filler zinnias, petunias, and coleus. I think that the bed is coming along very nicely. Keep at it. Hydrangea 6856 wants to know if I compost. Not yet, but I'm getting ready to build some compost bins probably in September so that we can start composting here on the property. I have to use bags to dispose of all of my stuff, and I don't like doing that. So I'm really looking forward to doing the compost bins. I'm going to make them out of pallets. So when I do that, make sure you tune in. This next picture is from Kathleen Malik. She lives in Dixon, Illinois, Zone 5B. She moved to her property 2 years ago, and they have a great name for this garden bed. It's called the garage garden. You're about as creative as I am calling things the driveway bed or the sidewalk bed. But you know what? That's what it's near, so that's what we call it. All right, when we moved in, it was filled with daisies gone mad, and she ripped them all out. That white fence on the right was an old trellis leaning up on the garage that the previous owner left behind. She rebuilt it into a fence. In the spring, tall alliums come up where the liatris are, and when they die back, the liatris shine. The Annabelle hydrangea was planted 2 years ago. My husband and I built a large production garden together in the back about 2 years ago. That is where I grow food and experiment. I also built the wide obelisk that's back there too. I love this. This is so great. I love when you take things and you upcycle them and you can reuse them. I love going to vintage stores and those shabby chic places that upcycle all that furniture. Oh my God. I love checking that stuff out. Our question comes from Bethany Morris. She lives in southeastern Indiana, Zone 6B. All right, I have a Zinfandel hydrangea in its second year. It's in 4 to 5 hours of morning sun on the back side of the house. She pruned it last year by 1/3. This year she only pruned it a little bit because I had a newborn and a toddler. It's grown well and made flowers, but now half the branches are drooping and their flowers are on the ground. I've been watering it once or twice a week, so it shouldn't be drooping. Is it a pruning issue or a location issue? The tag says partial sun was okay. Google says fertilizer will make it worse. What should I do? So I found that on some of my hydrangeas like that, it took a couple years for the bottom structure to really toughen up and get thicker to be able to hold the blooms. And I did go through a period of 2 or 3 years on some of my bigger hydrangeas with the bigger flowers that drooped. But once I got it to where the bottom was stronger, that stopped happening. Now, it could be something else. I don't know. If you have an extension office in your area, that's a great resource to call to see if maybe they can answer questions because they might know more specific things about your area where you live. I hope that helps. Mary Palmer 2088. Do you think the bug and slug killer, this one right here, will get those earwigs on my milkweed? They are in there and wait for the monarch eggs and caterpillars. Oh, they make me so mad. Oh, those earwigs are just eating my garden this year. They make me so mad too. Yes, the Captain Jack's bug and slug killer works on earwigs. I love this picture from Maureen Paul. I love that little bitty birdhouse that sits in the back. It draws my eye right through this bed. Very nice. This is from Maureen Paul. This is a garden on the Connecticut shoreline, Zone 6. She expanded a narrow border in April of 2020, and you did a beautiful job. I love this bed. Very lush. Stay Grant 8482 writes, I have a little Diablo 9 bark that I planted 3 years ago. It looked very nice until this year. I researched online and I felt it wasn't getting enough sun because of the tree above it that created more shade this year as it grew. All right, she moved it to a sunnier location, but it's looking half dead. Any suggestions? Well, my first instinct is to say cut it back, but when you cut 9 barks, they never grow back into a beautiful shape. Sometimes it can take a whole season for something to recover, and it just looks like crap for the whole season. You let the leaves fall off of it, you keep watering it. When it comes up in the spring, give it some fertilizer and see what happens next year. That's what I would do. This pretty little garden bed is from Jennifer, and she lives in zone 6B. She started this garden bed last year, and she writes that she struggled with lawn there because it got wet and stayed wet, and it was really hard to mow. Now that she's put a garden bed in there, everything is thriving. This is really pretty. I really like the colors that you chose. Oli Gonzalez 4556 wants to know, will I water the pot when I overwinter it in the garage? They also live in zone 5. They're talking about this pot right here that I'm going to drag in the garage, and yes, I will. Well, this is a familiar picture, and last month I talked about how John Buchanan did such a great job putting this together. Well, John, your wife Michelle actually did a great job putting this together. I didn't realize who had put the garden together, and it's all Michelle. John had nothing to do with it. I bet he cheers you on, though. The biggest difference in the picture is she did get the pot up on the pedestal. Everything is filling and beautiful, and it still looks glorious. Karen Lynn 1956's question is, I have cut back petunias when they get to looking leggy, which I do as well, but this year my Super Bell Calabricoas are looking leggy. Can I cut them back, and will they grow full like my petunias do? I don't know. Now, they say you can cut them back because they are like petunias. I've never had to cut mine back. I'm just happy when mine grow and look good, because a lot of times I have hit and miss luck with Calabricoas. I have a love-hate relationship with them. So you could try it. I mean, could they look any worse? Kelly Amador 8838 and Kay Steinbrink 1220 both want to know, will the 9 bark overwinter in that pot? And it will if I pull it in the garage, but not because of the 9 bark, but because of the kind of pot it is. Now, anything that you try to overwinter in a pot is a risk, always, because it could die. Now, the rule of thumb is, if you're going to overwinter something in a pot, 1, the pot needs to be able to handle the weather outside that you're in, but 2, it needs to be able to handle a cold zone 2 zones lower than the zone that you're in. I'm in 5. That 9 bark is a zone 3. So it can handle up to -40. So it should be able to overwinter in the pot. I don't want the pot to crack, so I'm going to pull them in the garage. Don't you love it when you can create a spot that you love to be in? This picture came from Barbara Holt, and she lives in Tigard, Oregon, zone 8B. She writes, this is what my husband is now calling his morning meditation place. You gotta love it when you create an area like that. You got the chair, you got the flowers, you got the sound of water. Ah, what a great place to hang out. The Tall Thriller is a fall sunflower. She found it by accident last year, and then she overwintered it in these styrofoam pots that she bought. She bought those at like a big box store. She was very surprised when it came back this year. So then she filled around it and put lantana, a chartreuse spiller. She doesn't remember what the name is, but that's okay. It still looks beautiful. And then she also learned, though, a pro tip, keep those tags, stuff them back behind there. That way, when you do something that you love, you'll remember what it is in the pot, and you'll never forget, and you can recreate it the next year. And what I do is I take the ones that I love, I put them in envelopes, and I mark them, and then I throw them in a drawer. That way, the ones that I absolutely fall in love with, I might not want to repeat it right away, but down the road, if I want to repeat it, I remember what I put in it. The last question from that video came from Dawn 6946. Hi there. I have a front landscape bed that has to be redone. We cut a little gem magnolia down that was planted right in the middle of the bed. What do I do with the stump and all the roots in the soil? Well, you either grind it out, which you can do with a stump grinder, or you can dig it out. You can pull it out. Eventually the roots will die. You can use a product called Sucker Punch on the side branches and stuff. That will help. And then they do sell a product that is used, and you put it on the stumps and it helps them die out, but that's usually a slower process. but all of those ways will work. I did a little short video called Pops of Color in the Garden, and it was designed to be a short, not part of like the repertoire of longer videos. I thought that when I did a video like that, YouTube used to allow us to categorize it and shove it under shorts. Well, it took that function away, so it ended up under the regular video. Sorry about that. It wasn't supposed to be there, but there were two questions. One of them being, what happened to your video? Well, that's what happened. And then the other one was about all these political ads that keep coming up. Daff Mahalo 7836. She just wants to know if I give permission for those to pop up. Some of them are the government asking you to donate money to campaigns. I have zero control over any ads that are on my channel. YouTube controls that 100%. And the only way to not have ads is to pay you as a person on YouTube to not have ads. The next video was backyard garden design, redesigning the back garden bed. This one right here, actually. And I only have one more thing that I ordered. I'm waiting for it to come in, and then I'll be able to do the whole revamp. Ooh, I'm excited. I can't wait to change this bed around. Elizabeth Cunningham 4749 said, in one of your videos you mentioned your favorite boxwoods for your area. Can you let me know the variety again, as I live close to the same zone and growing conditions, and I want to add some boxwoods. I like the winter gems and the green gems. They're interchangeable. They are my favorites. All right, I just scooched over a little bit. The next question is from Doreen 9838. She wants to know, how are your hostas not eaten by bugs? Well, again, I use right there, Captain Jack's Bug and Slug. Now, I have no slugs in my garden that I've seen, but I do have earwigs. And if you get real close to my hostas, I do have some insect damage. So some of them are more prone to it than others. Some of the thicker leafed hostas, or the ones with the really heavy ridges, those seem to be a little more resistant, and they don't get eaten up as much as, oh, there's a mosquito, as much as some of the other ones. This next picture is from Lori Smith Hughes. She lives in Kentucky Zone 6B. This is a garden that is over her septic tank, so where the actual tank itself sticks out, not the drain field. This is her annual garden with a few perennials. She's new to Kentucky, and that's the first time she's tried a garden like this. Next year, she will put in a brick border, lots of grading and changes to the backyard in the next few years. She bought a lot of the annuals from proven winners, and Lowe's is really the only place they have to shop in her little town. Lots of trial and error, and I'm telling you, I learned more from trial and error than I ever learned from a book. Getting out there and actually doing it, it's the best teacher. This picture here comes all the way from Queensland, Australia, from Vicky L. And she says that all of her beds are about 18 months to 2 years old, and she is in the middle of winter right now. Man, I wish my bed looked that good in the middle of winter. Very nice. Monique Hamilton 7391 writes, I love this design so much that I want to copy it. Can you tell me if the arborvitaes are deer resistant? That's a trick question, because arborvitaes sometimes are and sometimes aren't. It depends on your deer, and it depends on where you live. They will adapt, and sometimes they eat arborvitaes and sometimes they don't. Now, this particular arborvitae, which is the Linsville, grows pretty low to the ground, has kind of a different textured foliage than a normal arborvitae. I've had great luck with these, and the deer have not eaten them where I live. But that doesn't mean they won't eat them where you live. I don't know. Linda Hall, 1971. Looks lovely. Great choice with the hydrangeas. How about a 9-bark in there? Well, I don't know that I have room for a 9-bark, and the only place that I could think to put it would be where I'm thinking about putting the Woodgilla. Now, the Midnight Wine, I can't find it, and I read somewhere that they actually discontinued it. I think I'm going to put a spilled wine in there. I did go look up a 9-bark, though, and the problem is it's going to be the same size as the Bobo hydrangea, and I don't want it to be the same size. I want it to be shorter, because the Little Devil and the Tiny Wine are the smallest ones there are, and they grow 3 to 4 feet, and that's too tall. I need it to be shorter. And the Spilled Wine, that only gets 18 inches, so it's the next level down. So that's probably what I'm going to put in there. But that's a good suggestion. Thank you, Peggy Mills, for this beautiful picture of the phlox and the daylily. Peggy lives in Zone 7A in Kentucky. Such a sweet little picture. The next video was a DIY on how to make a wreath out of your hydrangea blooms. And the one thing I failed to mention in the video was, and it did get asked, by Agnes Carboni 8257. Do the flowers turn black from moisture from being outside hanging on the door? Yes, you got to dry it inside before you put it outside. And you have more stable temperatures inside in your air-conditioned house. Outside, it could be really dry, it could be really humid. I don't know where you live. I don't know what your temperatures are. I should have said that in the video and I didn't, and I'm really sorry. You have to dry it inside first. Look at this sweet little design in front of the woods. It comes from Annette Brookins, and she's a relatively new gardener. She enjoys my videos, and she lives in southeastern Wisconsin, Zone 5, not very far from where I live. Her husband expanded the fire pit and piled all the excess dirt up against the woods that line the property, so she decided to do a garden bed there. She thought it would be the perfect spot for a shade perennial garden. It was probably right around the time that I did the shade perennial garden design video, which I am going to be putting in either this year or next year on my property. She wasn't sure where to start, and so that really helped her. I think this is great. I love that you put this in here. I can't wait to see it grow up. The last question is from Judy Anderson, 8782. How many hydrangeas should I plant to have enough blooms to make this next year? Oh, one. That's all you need. I picked these off of, I'm not sure if it was a Limelight or if it was a Strawberry Vanilla. It was one of those two. I planted it. It was like one of the first hydrangeas I planted out by the road at the corner where the intersection meets of the garden center. And there are still a gazillion blooms on it. So one, that's all you need. I want to say I ended up picking maybe 50 heads is what I picked to make the wreath. That's about right. Oh, I feel you guys. It's hard to pick one picture and only one picture to share. So I have chosen this one from my garden. I really like this one. I hope you like it too. That is a wrap for Garden Gab this time. Make sure you tune in on Saturday, August 17th for our first live Garden Gab, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. We'll be answering the questions from the previous videos. We'll be answering your questions live. And so that I'm not over here doing this, trying to read while I'm talking to you guys, I have a partner that's going to come with me and hand me the questions so that I'm not doing that and I'm paying attention to you and you get my undivided attention. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it answered a lot of questions for you. Also, don't forget, if you want me to come and tour your garden and you live within 4 hours in Illinois, Lower Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin, Indiana, I would love to come and tour your garden. We are showcasing our very first one next week. I went to a lovely lady's house named Patty in German Valley, Illinois, and spent an absolutely wonderful morning in her garden. Make sure you guys check that out. It is, awesome. All right, I'm Michelle. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Get out in your garden. It deserves some TLC. So do you. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.